Our underreported stories segment tonight, Hollywood actress Kelly Carlson is joining the fight to protect little girls from female genital mutilation. In the state of Maine, Republicans and Democrats are at war over a bill that would ban the barbaric practice. Who would defend mutilating little girls, you ask? Well, Democrats and the ACLU, that's who. Watch Kelly Carlson respond.
A horror called female genital mutilation is happening in America. The Centers for Disease Control estimate that over 500,000 young women and children either already have been or will be subjected to this barbaric form of physical assault. Now, Maine is considered by the federal government to be one of the 8 worst states when it comes to the risk of female genital mutilation. But shockingly, the American Civil Liberties Union opposes the bill, stating, and I quote them, "The risk of mutilation is not worth expanding Maine's criminal code," unquote.
With me now, activist and actress Kelly Carlson. Kelly, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Kelly, this is mind-boggling to me that the ACLU, who claim to stand up for civil rights, they claim to stand up for human rights, they are at the same time actively lobbying for Maine not to pass a bill that would criminalize female genital mutilation. I don't understand this.
Yeah, well, that makes 2 of us. I don't understand it either. I mean, I have my suspicions as to why. I'm thinking that it has to do with cultural sensitivities, probably.
Right, and that's the part. I mean, this should not be a bipartisan issue. This is a human rights issue. This is a civil rights issue. This is abuse of women. This is child abuse. This should not be something that we are divided on as Republicans and Democrats and independent and whatever else you want to call your political views. This is something we should all be able to come together. And one of the reasons that Maine Democrats claim that they're opposing this bill is they say that they fear it will offend the cultural sensitivity, like you said, of the 10,000 Somalis who now call Maine home. Kelly, my question is, isn't that cultural vulnerability all the more reason to enact protections for these little girls?
Well, yes, of course, but also let's look at another really important point. If you're talking about cultural sensitivities with the Somalian population, do they mean religious sensitivities or religious expression? Now, I'm not a constitutional expert, and I'm not a human rights expert either, but I'm pretty sure you can't stand behind the First Amendment of religious expression while violating the Ninth Amendment, which covers individual rights. You can't use an amendment to hurt another person because that's violating their rights.
No, you're 100% correct here. I mean, you don't have a right to religious expression to push that, to force that, to subject someone else to your right of religious expression while you're violating their rights. And I mean, these are 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old girls who are brutally cut and sewn together, their genitalia cut off. I mean, it's the most brutal procedure. I hesitate sometimes to even talk about it graphically on the show because I don't know who's watching. I hope there aren't little children watching this, but at the same time, we have to talk about what this means. These children, these little tiny girls are subject to this. They're tied down to the bed. There are razor blades and shards of glass that are used to cut off their sexual organs. They're not given anesthesia. They're not even asked permission, and they suffer the health and psychological impacts of this the rest of their lives. Kelly, there are 500,000 little girls and young women in our nation who are either have suffered this or who are at risk to suffer this. I don't understand why liberals and feminists are quiet on this issue.
Oh, well, votes. And this is, it sure seems to be about religion. And to me, that's unconscionable. And going back to kind of the point I was making before, I can't pull out a gun and assault you and stand behind the Second Amendment. Why? Because that violates your human rights. That violates your individual rights. I have no idea why legislatures are ignoring this and standing behind cultural, religion, whatever you want to call it, for girls to get mutilated and scarred for the rest of their life. Where's the argument? Where is even the confusion on this topic?
No, like I said at the beginning, it seems like it should be almost a no-brainer to be a bipartisan issue. It's shocking to me that Democrats in Maine or that the ACLU, who all claim to stand up for the most vulnerable among us, won't stand up for these little girls. Kelly, one last question before we go. It is unusual for someone from Hollywood to be so outspoken on an issue like this. On a personal level, what prompted you to start getting involved in this, speaking out, standing up for these little girls?
Well, because of the point that I made earlier. I mean, the hypocrisy of standing behind the First Amendment. Things like that drive me crazy because I take our Bill of Rights very seriously and I approach it with the utmost respect. And when I see somebody exploiting something like our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, for something that's so barbaric, it infuriates me. And by the way, Hollywood should be behind this. This is all about human rights. You know, women's rights, where are they? They're afraid to be called, you know, anti-Islam or whatever it is that you know, they use to censor people. Well, I don't subscribe to that. I don't really care what you call me. I care about this 7-year-old girl that's being tied down and having a perfectly healthy organ removed in the name of purity.
Right. That's beautiful. I couldn't have said it better. Kelly, you're doing great work. Come back on the show anytime. We're dedicated here on Tipping Point to exposing stories that other mainstream news networks won't cover, especially when it comes to the exploitation or abuse of women. And there's no better example of that than female genital mutilation right here in our country. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.